The views of this program are not necessarily the views of KJLL Radio, its management, or its sponsors. The host is solely responsible for its content. Enjoy.
Welcome, everybody, to the Jake Feinberg Show. My guest today is the baddest bass player in the Bay Area. He's played with Les McCann, Jerry Garcia, Huey Lewis, Esther Phillips, Maria Muldaur, Rick Danko, the Average White Band, Edwin Hawkins, Pee Wee Ellis, and Bob Weir. He grew up learning the bass alongside his father, Merl Saunders, who exposed him to his world, which was rich with soul and full of love. His most recent CD, Romancing the Bass, is now available on CD, and that's just what we were listening to. I'd like to welcome Tony Saunders to the program. Tony, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, how you doing, Jake? I'm glad to be a part of your show today.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Why don't we talk a little bit about those what we just heard?
That song?
Yeah.
Okay, that song is Bigger Than Outside. It's from my new CD called Romancing the Bass, which will actually we're finishing it right at present. And the single is from that album is called Tender Loving, which was sung by Tony Lindsay, who's the lead singer in Santana. That'll be out post-haste, and the CD should be out in September. But it's a great CD. It features a lot of songs that I've done, and it's actually the last song that it's one of the last songs that my dad played on. I wrote a song for him on there that's called Song for My Dad. And he was on his way to a gig at the Sweetwater, and he came in and played a piano solo on it. And, we always did trades. So I'm sure that I played on a lot of stuff for him playing that solo for me.
You know, it's when I go through the names, Garcia, Huey Lewis, Esther Phillips, Maria Muldaur, Pee Wee Ellis, Edwin Hawkins. I mean, you have folk, psych, R&B, soul, Americana, gospel. You know, how did you learn to play all those idioms?
Well, it was an interesting, if you can imagine, I was a kid growing up in San Francisco, and I grew up in the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood, and, I was 10 years old when 1965 happened, and when, the revolution happened and it changed, and all of a sudden there were these college kids hanging out, they were called beatniks and hippies and, just different kind of names, and it was totally different than what we were used to. But these people were real free, so it was a great environment to grow in because I just didn't grow up as an R&B kid. I was able to grow up when my dad started hanging around Jerry, which was around '67. So I was able to, learn that kind of music. I played with Buffy St. Marie, so I was able to learn folk music. I'm a deadhead that can dance cool or twirl. I could do either one.
Yeah.
And just being open to new things. I was always challenged. I grew up as actually a pianist, and I graduated from the Conservatory of Music in San Francisco playing piano, and then I started playing bass when I was 14, and that was just because I was around John Kahn and my dad and Jerry, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I started liking bass. And I saw a couple of bass players that I really liked, and I switched. And my dad was going like, "What are you doing?"
But you switched from. I'm sorry. You what were you playing before the bass?
I was playing keyboards and organ, and I had a group.
And your dad's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, he's like, he spent all his money, and he's like, "Hey, when my dad would go on the road, we would take his organ out and do like little high school gigs." And
that is so great.
He wouldn't catch us, and we would do gigs, and I was playing keyboards. I had a bass player and drummer and guitar player and singers, and I was the keyboard. People knew me when I was coming up as the keyboard guy, and then all of a sudden when I was 14, I started playing bass, and then my dad started encouraging me. He said, if that's what you want to do, you got to do it wholeheartedly. And I had some great teachers. I had John Kahn as a teacher.
Yeah, let's just before you've been throwing a huge amount of amazing information out there. I just want to slow down 1 second.
No problem.
Let's just put it in perspective here. Talk about your dad's impact on the Fillmore District music scene, and in a larger sense, the Bay Area music scene. The stuff from what I can gather, Calvin Keys told me that your dad and like Groove Holmes, those guys were essentially having these all night jam sessions down.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Okay. Well, there in San Francisco, it was in that time period. My dad used to play at the Playpen, which is on the Visadero, the Upper Room, which was upstairs from the Playpen. It was, imagine, they had national black acts upstairs from this like 150-seat little lounge. Then they had this national place upstairs called the Upper Room, which would hold like 500 people, where Groove Holmes, Jimmy Smith would play. And then there was also the Both And, which was on the other side of the Visadero. At the Both And, I used to watch George Duke play all the time, and Herbie Hancock. And these people were just like huge people, but they were right there and accessible. And then my dad was held down a regular job. He played Friday night, Saturday morning jam session, Friday night till 2 a.m., and Saturday night from 6 a.m. till 11 a.m.
Wow.
And they did this every weekend.
Who was in the band, do you know?
Oh, my dad and my cousin Eddie Moore played drums.
Right.
Who, if you look up, he played with like Stanley Turrentine and Sonny Rollins and people like that. And it was just an amazing amount of like rich musical history right in front of my face. I mean, I met all these people when I was a kid. Miles Davis.
It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Herbie. I had piano lessons from Herbie Hancock. These people would all be around my dad, and I have a picture in my house of my dad playing with Miles. When he was playing, and then you asked me about the trio he had with Eddie Moore, and first it was Jimmy Daniels playing guitar, then Junius Simmons playing guitar, and then Calvin Keys played guitar, Jimmy Daniels. They were just like these phenomenal guitar players. Then the drummer, my dad switched drummers to this guy, what was his name? Bill Elliott. Mm-hmm. And Bill Elliott was married to Dionne Warwick. So Dionne Warwick came to my house. I charged my friends $1 to come look at her. I said,
she was beautiful. House. She was gorgeous.
Yeah, man. This guy was playing at this, this urban club down on Fillmore, driving a Bentley to these gigs, and him, Johnny Taylor came to my house. It was Little Anthony and the Imperials. They came to my house, and all my friends were like amazed, but they knew who my dad was. And my dad, during that time, he was at first when we were young, he worked at the post office, and then it was a big thing when he gave up the post office to be a full-time musician. But once he started, he never looked back, and he was kind of a pioneer. With that, when he met Jerry, he was like one of the pioneers of people from, because then it was kind of segregated a little bit, but he was one of the first guys that would play with whoever.
Yeah, no, I want to hit on this, Tony, is you say it was a little bit segregated, but your color did not matter to your father. He crossed over all ethnic lines, and
right.
That really started. That was because you guys happened to be living in the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood, and you.
Yeah, my grandparents bought a house, 1548 Page Street, and it was like a one door from Ashbury and Page, and I saw this Irish Catholic neighborhood, get overrun by hippies in 1965, and for me, I was 10 years old, so it was kind of cool because all of a sudden there were these girls running around with see-through shirts. So my grandmother would wonder why we always would.
You were hanging out.
Yeah, we said we finished our chores at like about 8:30, and we were up on Haight Street at 9 o'clock, like going, wow, look at all this. It was pretty an amazing thing. But we didn't even know that there was any kind of segregation or racial stripes, because we knew everybody and we were just friendly with everybody. My dad met Oscar Brown Jr. when I was really young, and he was working on this play during that time, right around the same time he was playing with Garcia. And, Oscar Brown Jr. was a brilliant playwright, and so we were around, like, just brilliant people, from when we were like 10 or 11 years old. Not that we weren't always around brilliant people, but we started getting exposed on a worldly aspect at that point. Along with, you want to hear a funny story,
Yeah.
is my grandmother would call because the music was so loud coming from the Panhandle, because we had to be in bed at 8 o'clock. And so it was funny that, one year we're calling the police, and then the next year, these people are like in our house, and they're playing together. So it was, and my Jerry, he liked my grandma. He liked, and he kind of, adopted us into his musical thing. So it was kind of an interesting turnaround.
I was talking to a good buddy of mine, and we both agreed. I don't think there'd be a better person to articulate arguably one of the most amazing musical relationships in the history of modern music, which is your dad and Jerry.
Yeah.
And if you would, just take it slow, and I might interject once in a while with questions, but this is important archival stuff because this was truly a musical friendship that, if I'm correct, there used to be a club, the Matrix.
The Matrix down on Fillmore, yeah.
And I think I remember Jerry. I remember him saying that he used to like to go down there, and he used to see your dad down there, and then they started playing. Is that kind of how they met originally?
Yeah. He met. My dad was starting to play with like Nick Gravenitis and John Kahn in like little things like down there at the Matrix. And
John Cipollina down there.
No. John Kahn.
John
the
Kahn,
bass
yeah.
player.
Yes.
Because that's how my dad. They were doing sessions with Gravenitis, they would work together doing sessions when Gravenitis came here. And the reason I know this story, Gravenitis just told me.
Okay, right.
I just produced a record for him about a month and a half ago, and it was. He said that they would go down there to the Matrix, and it would be like a jam session. And along with Tom Fogerty, he was there. And the Matrix was a club that was just like a big room, and it had pillows on the floor. And I remember if we couldn't get back home, we would like hide in the pillows while they did the gigs.
Wow.
And and then Jerry used to go down there and play with people, and then that's where he essentially met my dad. And they just started doing those little gigs, and it started out as just like a fun thing to do.
What was the talk about? What was fun about it? What was
I think that Jerry was a guy who wanted to always grow. He wanted to be a better player always, and he was like always interested in learning about stuff, learning about chords, why this, why that, what made him work. And so my dad went to school in Germany. I forget, I think it was the Main School of Music or something like that. I can't remember really. But I know he went to school in Germany when he was in the Air Force, and he graduated from there with a music, because when he was in the Air Force, he was like a music major. And he just had a wealth of knowledge of how to do chords good. Because if my dad was like, he was like Richard Groove Holmes. He was like him and Jimmy Smith and Groove Holmes, they were all like the same. They can all play a lot of serious jazz music. And Jerry wanted to learn how that music worked, what it was to play over chords, what it was to play over structure, what it meant, to be able to play over changes. You know what I mean? Because basically, playing in the Dead, they thought of all that stuff. So the challenge wasn't there as much, although it was challenging to make it songs like the Dead have songs. Mm-hmm. But at the same instance, from a musical aspect of learning really how to play chords, he really was grabbing onto my dad for that foundation. And if you listen to the history of the Dead and learn how their songs went, you'll see that later, later on, when they had A Touch of Grey and songs like that.
Yeah, with Brent.
That was a Brent song.
Yeah, well, I mean, during when he was the keyboard player, they did Touch of Grey.
Yeah, but if you realize that song and look at the growth, that was when their chords were like real cool.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you could hear their growth through their songs.
Oh wow, that's
great. I could hear it from learning from the early songs, learning to the end songs, where they stopped with Jerry's songs. you can just hear I could hear the growth like amazingly. And they all got better because the Dead, they always surrounded themselves with great people.
I wanted to actually, this question just popped into my head, but so, because it seemed like, well, when Jerry met Merle, they said, let's do this. And then that would essentially, they would do local gigs, but how did were the rest of the Dead also fascinated? They knew your dad, but I mean, did they try to soak up some of the information as well? But it was...
Well, you know what? They always have been really nice, and like really nice. Like I cannot explain to you, exceedingly nice.
Mm-hmm.
All of the people, all of the musicians in the Grateful Dead, to my dad were really, 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 really nice. And Jerry was exceptionally. They just had it was like one of those relationships where, I think the reason they had the other groups, it was political.
Right.
And I just don't even want to get into that because, I'm just glad I had a great time. You know what I mean? I can't say exactly, but it seemed to be political stuff. And Jerry never was involved in it. It was just political. But he always said that my dad was one of his favorite people. So, and I have that on a tape recording that he did right before he died. He even worked on a project with me right before he died. I was doing the music to this movie, Farmer and Chase. And he worked with me doing the music on that. And then they finally couldn't get the budget together, so they bowed out. But, he was a nice person. You know what I mean? The stuff between, when he got sick, the first person that he called was my dad.
Yeah, we have to take this in chronological order.
Okay, so let's go back.
And then of course, let's be very clear that it's obvious. I didn't know this going in, but John Kahn was also very instrumental in your influence as well.
I would be at John Kahn's house when I first learned how to play bass. Every time my dad went there, he would spend a half hour, 45 minutes with me showing me what to do. And I could play exactly like him. I still can.
That's great.
I can play exactly like him. I can look like him. I could stand up there how he used to way back in the day.
Dude, John used cigarette. The cigarette would just hang out of his mouth.
And the way he would move his legs, and the way he would hold his head up high, that was all like way cool to me. and because I was my idol, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I idolized him. And then he told me bass players to listen to. He said, hey, you need to listen to James Jamerson. Listen to him because you're going to get a lot out of that. Hey, you need to listen to Chuck Rainey. Hey, you need to listen to Jack Cassidy. And Jack Cassidy is like a great friend of mine, him and Yorma. And so it's like, he told me exactly what to do, and it made me a great musician. I remember, back in the day when I first would sub with my dad, and Jerry would come there. So this is a story you don't know because it's not documented.
Let's hear the off the record story.
So you talk about learning stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I was like in the 12th grade. 12th grade. So the first time I subbed with him, it was my first, when I stopped playing college football. So it was my first year of college. My dad called me and said, had you been practicing, Tony? I said, yeah. He said, well, John has to go away, so he wants you to come up here and come back home and sub for John. And I subbed for him in the Merle and Jerry band, and I played exactly what John played, pretty much note for note.
What year was that?
73.
73?
73 or 74.
And this was your dad?
Dad, Merle Saunders and Jerry Garcia.
And now, do we have recordings of that? We need that immediately.
Yeah, there is.
There are recordings.
There's recordings of everything. Yeah, and actually Steve Parrish, the roadie for Jerry, he gave them to me when I turned like 25 for a birthday present. The first recordings that I ever played with them.
Okay, at some point, let's talk about how I can hear some of that.
That's going to be amazing because I played some cool stuff.
What were you playing? Were you playing like? Hold on, just give me a minute. Like Wondering Why, like the slow tunes. Real tripped out.
The first song I ever played with them was Expressway to the Heart. Expressway to Your Heart. That was the first song I ever played with them.
Your adrenaline must have been pumping like no other.
Oh my God, I was so nervous. But after that first note, I was cool.
And where was it? Where was the venue?
Into the Beginning in Cotati.
In Cotati,
California. And it was cool because, before that, I was a roadie, right? I would load up the organ at my house, and then when we got to the gig, Steve Parrish would take it from there. But he didn't. He was appreciated that he didn't have to come all the way to my dad's house. So he said, "You guys load it up." He would pay me. And then all of a sudden, as soon as I played my first gig, I couldn't roadie no more. I was messed up. I was like, "Oh man, that was my easy money." So he says, "Nah, Tony, you're a musician." And Steve Parrish gave me like equipment, everything. He hooked me up totally. And Jerry would tell me, when I was doing good, and he'd also tell me when I was doing bad. You know what I mean? But he would also.
How would he express something if it wouldn't be a slight? How would he phrase it to you that you needed to?
He looked me straight in the face and he said, "Tony, you need to like listen up to this stuff and learn this too. It's not we said we love you, but you got to listen and learn." Because sometimes I wouldn't be around them for a while.
Of course,
they would have new songs and I wouldn't know them. And I if I made a mistake, he would look at me and said, "You know what, Tony, we could do that better." And then so he would come around. My dad started this group, Aunt Monk, and he would come and Jerry would come, unannounced and play.
No way.
With me at this little club on Monday night with my dad and me. Unannounced, like it was like $5. I wouldn't even be that.
What was the name of the club?
The name of the club was the Sand Dunes.
Okay, we're not. I don't want to get crazy here. This is great. So, I mean, at this point, what year are we in? Are we in what year are we in?
74.
Right now? We're in. Okay, can we go back a little to so in 73, you filled in with that band, and then we're going to go to a hard break in a few minutes, but what I wanted to get at, I don't want to get into a really open-ended question, but when you began to start playing, and gaining your confidence and growing a little bit, how accessible were the other studio heavyweights in and around California? Like, how did you wind up in the Fantasy Studios?
Well, I grew up in that studio because my dad was on that label. I remember when Creedence Clearwater were the Gollywogs, and I just grew up there. So, and then when my dad would do sessions, when I started playing bass, I would always be in the vocal booth playing my bass. They would actually tell me to go in there and play. And this was for my own good. And
you were running into Joe Henderson was there, George Duke was there. I mean,
everybody. Everybody was amazing.
I think that's what I want to capture on the Jake Feinberg Show is the idea of the richness. And I've already started this project, Tony. I'll tell you about it, where I'm trying to really talk. I want to get in touch with the Conservatory of Music in San Francisco. You're the third. You're the third one now. Pete Magadini, the drummer, and George, and now you have all been on my show, and you've all gone to the conservatory, and I feel like there are real oral histories to tell about that school and what they have done to enhance Bay Area music as well.
Yeah, it's an amazing place, and they really they made me learn theory. I was so good at theory when I was young that I didn't have to go to school in high school to my music class. And the guy just said, if you get an A, Tony, you get an A. But if you miss one problem, I got to give you an F because your attendance is bad. And I never missed it. I never missed a question. So, that's how good the conservatory was.
We're talking to Tony Saunders, the baddest bass player in the Bay Area. Tony, hang tight. We're going to come back after a hard break and do a lot more.
All righty.
Radio. I'm Lisa Campbell. Top story, Congressman Anthony Weiner wants to go away, seek treatment, refocus on his marriage. But several top colleagues in Congress want him to step down for good.
It wasn't that long ago that they kind of said that this is his deal. Debbie Wasserman Schultz in particular, who is also not only the DNC chair, but a fellow Democratic congresswoman, she called this a personal matter. Not anymore. And the reason they're saying in their statements, and I'm being told privately, is because they believe that this is insurmountable. It is a distraction.
CNN's Dana Bash in Washington. Fazul Abdullah Mohammed, al-Qaeda's leader in East Africa, has been killed, taken down by government forces in Somalia. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton calls the killing a significant blow to al-Qaeda. And a windy weekend in Arizona. Firefighters say it's not helping taking down wildfires burning now for 14 days. This is CNN Radio.
Hello there. My name is Amy, and I work at Lowe's. Father's Day is coming soon, and Lowe's has tons of dad-approved gifts to make his day, like a Cobalt 19-piece mechanics toolkit. Was $29.98, now it's yours for just $19.98. That's a $10 savings. Or how about a Porter Cable 2-piece combo kit? Dad gets an 18-volt drill, circular saw, NiCad battery and charger for just $89. Was $109. We've got what Dad wants. Lowe's, let's build something together. Offers valid now through 6/20. Some restrictions apply while supplies last.
Jay Farner here with Quicken Loans. Are rates going up? Are they going down? You know, no one really knows. But at Quicken Loans, we've got an amazing way to protect you from that uncertainty. It's our new Quicken Loans Rate Drop Advantage program. Simply close a loan with us, and then, if rates happen to drop within the next 7 years, you have the option to refinance, and we'll cover a majority of your closing fees. So give Quicken Loans a call today at 800-970-2611 or go to quickenloans.com.
Refinance subject to credit approval. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. One of the first things I wanted to do when I moved to Tucson was find authentic Chinese cuisine. After a tip from the Chinese Student Association, I headed over to Badar Chinese Restaurant. Well, it's been 7 years, and I have never looked back. Located at 7321 East Broadway Boulevard, Badar has been a family-run operation since 1992. The award-winning chef produces succulent dishes from sizzling ginger chicken to salt and pepper shrimp. The thing that separates Badar from the rest is that the chef procures ancient oriental dishes with the exotic island flair of Taiwan. Most importantly, there are no gimmicks or razzle-dazzle at Badar. You won't find any flat-screen TVs or karaoke machines. Badar is a place to go enjoy good food and spend time with your family. It exudes peace and tranquility after a long week of work. So come down and check out Badar Chinese Restaurant. Hong Hao Chu. It's that good.
Hi, this is Tommy DiMaggio. When your friends or relatives come to beautiful Tucson and you have already taken them to the Desert Museum in Sabino Canyon too many times, it's time for something different. What's different, you ask? Purple Mountain Pack Goats. That's me, Tommy DiMaggio, and my wonderful goats. We've been leading hikes in the Coronado National Forest for 15 years. We take people of all ages and abilities on beautiful hikes in the surrounding mountains and deserts. I provide great meals, animal companionships. We have day hikes or overnight hikes. We have been featured in Arizona Highways, the Sunday London Times travel section, National Geographic Canadian Travel Magazine. For information or for your personal hike, call 403-4056 or visit us on the web at azpackgoat.com or call 403-4056. Remember, bring your field guide, camera, and imagination. We'll bring the rest. A great lunch carried by the goats. 403-4056 or visit us on the web, azpackgoat.com.
Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. Every Friday night I get takeout from Bai Tong Restaurant, which serves Tucson's most authentic Thai cuisine. Pad Thais, fresh vegetables, and spicy Penang curry are my personal favorites, but every meal is sumptuous and cooked to order. Located at 4853 East Speedway Boulevard, Bai Tong serves compelling and affordable lunch specials as well as a full dinner menu. Bai Tong has ingratiated itself with the community by providing a peaceful environment to enjoy a meal with friends and family. Open weekdays for lunch 11 to 3, 5 to 9:30 for dinner Sunday to Thursday, until 10 on Friday and Saturday. So come down to Bai Tong Restaurant at 4853 East Speedway Boulevard to experience a taste of Thailand. Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. Being a father, I know there is nothing more important than your child's health. And nobody is more dedicated to children's health in Southern Arizona than Dwayne Dyson. Dr. Dyson is Tucson's finest pediatrician and has devoted much of his professional career to improving the lives of children. Located at 4530 East Camp Fort Lowell, Dr. Dyson's resume speaks for itself. After doing his undergraduate work at Cal Berkeley, his schooling took him to Morehouse School of Medicine, where he mentored young adolescents about the need for pediatric physicians in Atlanta, and worked extensively with infants at the Texas Children's Hospital. The special thing about Dr. Dyson is that while his in-house care is exceptional, he also prepares families about what to expect once they leave the office. Dr. Dyson provides comprehensive and honest analysis for all of his patients. Dr. Dyson and his family live and work in Tucson because he knows how vibrant and diverse the community is. He is committed to procuring a robust family health center that can instill trust and alleviate the concerns of parents. Like I said, his resume speaks for itself. For more information, check out DysonPediatrics.com. When Coffee Times first opened, many wondered how this standalone coffee hut could survive among the beasts of Java lore. But some 10 years later, the answer is a resounding yes. Located at 3401 East Speedway Boulevard, Coffee Times specializes in many different drinks from mocha fraps to lattes to my personal favorite, the Ice Power Coffee. The best part about Coffee Times is their convenient two-way drive-thru, lunch menu, and supreme service. Not to mention their weekly special. The next time you're in the area, head over to Coffee Times on Speedway between Alvernon and Country Club. It will definitely kickstart your day.
If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Be a part of a new coalition with Jake Feinberg. The second half of his show starts right now.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Jake Feinberg Show. Today we're joined by bass player Tony Saunders. Tony, it's great to have you on the program, my friend.
Great, I'm loving it.
I'm loving it, too. I wanted to actually, all these things are in my mind, and I don't want to rush it, so did you know Hadley Callman very well?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I've
Because
known Hadley Callman since I was a little kid.
Because and also there are two guys I want to ask you about, a little obscure. Hadley's not so obscure, but the other guy is a guy named John White Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
John White Jr., the guitar player.
Oh yeah.
I have a picture of him in my house. Actually, John White taught me even before John Kahn. John White showed me how to hold the bass.
I knew it. I knew that there was a connection there.
My dad tried to cure him. Because he played with my dad too, and I have a picture of him in my television room.
What do you mean you tried to cure him?
He had a little problem.
Oh, he had a problem. Okay.
He had a little problem. I think he was. I don't know.
No, because he as quickly as he. There's two albums. One it was on the Mainstream label, and one of them was John White Jr. and he's sitting on this huge redwood tree, and it looks like it must be in the Bay Area somewhere. And your dad is on organ.
Yeah, that's how they met.
Exactly. And how did that come about? Do you have any idea?
I just remember that he came around at a time. My dad was playing with him, John White, and what's the other guy that was kind of different? Not Bloomfield.
That was kind of different. I don't know, but the point was your dad was really he was steeped in soul jazz.
Yeah, and John White was bad.
Holy cow, that album is like it is razor sharp. It is they are on fire, and everybody looks like they're out of their minds.
Right? Yeah, I would imagine. There's this song that him and Bloomfield are on of my dad's called Iron Horse. That they did when my dad was on Fantasy. It was like a 45.
Really?
And Bloomfield and John White were on it. But John White actually, my dad bought me a bass, and I think he got it through John White, and it was like a really funky, cheap bass. Mm-hmm. And then, when I started playing that, I played it for about 3 months, and they saw that I was really interested in it. Tom Fogerty gave me a pre-CBS bass that he had just sitting around, and so then I started working with John Kahn. But at first, John White Jr. actually he sat there and taught me the Staple Singers bass line to one of their old songs, and I used to think I was real cool, but all I could play was that one bass line.
I have there's a real overlapping here with Fogerty, Garcia, your dad, you, with Fantasy Records, and excuse me. I think the epitome is the album of your father and Garcia, the Keystone Encores or the Live from the Keystone, and you open up the gatefold, and there's a bunch of hippie girls all hanging out. There are some people just smoking some dope. And the funniest thing is your dad's there, John Kahn, Garcia, and then there's a cop there too. It was like that epitomized the Bay Area scene. Everybody was just having a good time.
I never did understand it. Why the cops would always be standing there. I mean, Keystone, Winterland, or wherever, they would just be standing there, I guess they got a contact, so they were just, immobilized.
and it just, to me, again, Garcia went back to the Dead in '74, but then his interest started to go in different directions again, and your father and him came up with the band Legion of Mary.
Correct.
And why don't you
I
talk
don't think that he ever went away from the Dead. I just think that he was burdened with. I mean, I'm serious. He would show up at my my dad and my gigs with Aunt Muck. He was playing at little places. I mean, he played on Union Street in San Francisco at this place called The Generosity. It was tiny, and he would just show up with his amp in his car. Show up, come in, play. He never wanted any money. He just wanted to play. And when you talk about him learning. We played a Stanley Clarke song one night. I forget what the name of it was, but the song went all over the place. And he came up to me and he shook my hand. He said, "Tony, that was a good one, because I couldn't just do what I thought that I could do.
Right.
I couldn't just play along. And every time I went to go, when I felt comfortable, it was something. I really liked that. That was a great song." And a lot of the songs that they played in Legion of Mary, we played them at first with the Aunt Monk group, and Jerry, that's where he would play them first there, and then he would transpose them over to the groups with my dad.
Who was in the Aunt Monk group?
And at first it was E.W. Wainwright, myself, my dad, and most of the times Jerry would come sit in and be the guitar player, and or it would be another young guitar player, Chris Hayes, who went on to play guitar with Huey Lewis and the News for 20 years.
I was going to say, because what an amazing experience. Who was Aunt Monk? I think somebody asked me that.
Aunt Monk. The real story is my grandma's name was Monk, which is what her sisters called her, and then the rest of the kids that were nieces and nephews to her called her Auntie. And then my dad one day said, "Hey, let's just call the group Aunt Monk after your grandmother." And we were all happy, because she was really happy that she knew that she was Aunt Monk, and so it gave her status in the community that she was Aunt Monk, and that her son and grandson were playing together in a group.
And we, as we move forward here, I do want to touch on this idea of your musical relationship with your father during these years. I sent you that CD from Nanuet, New York.
Yeah, that was a great thing for you to do.
And I wanted to talk about that, the whole idea of being able to play with your dad, and how that music evolved and the love you had there.
Yeah, it was amazing, because the amazing thing was that okay, so after I switched from piano, then when I got to be 18 and 19, I was like, I am so glad I switched to bass, because now I could have a job playing with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he would sit down, and he would never embarrass me when I didn't know stuff. He would just sit down and explain it to me. And I'm serious. On several, if a song was really challenging to me, he would sit there and work it out. When I was learning how to be a soloist, he would go over changes and tell me why they would work. Same thing he would do with Jerry. He would tell me how to play it, and I always have liked a little different than him, because I'm a different person. But he liked to take from me what I added to the picture. He would always say that he had me so that I could play bass with him, and I was his personal bass player, and I always had to play whenever he needed me. And it was a great journey. The project, he really taught me about producing. When the Dead and my dad did the Twilight Zone, it actually Phil Lesh gave me the job, because Phil didn't have the time to do it, and he said, "Tony, you could do it." And so all of those episodes, although it says it's the Dead and my dad, it was really me playing bass.
In like 85?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so. Listen, bring yourself out. I hope that's in writing somewhere.
Oh yeah, I got the contracts. Oh yeah,
good. You got the contract. I'm just saying, get it out of the.
It says it on the episodes, and I wrote a lot of it.
Oh, that's
I could show you some royalty sheets.
That's
no. I still get royalties from that stuff.
Tell me that there are unreleased from the vault reconstruction shows that John Kahn couldn't make, that Tony Saunders sat in on.
Oh yeah, there are. There's a few of them.
Oh boy,
you got it.
We really need to get together, Tony. I need to hear some of this stuff. Man.
Yeah, it's there's it was what can I say? To be in an environment where you're infused with history, and you don't even know it, but you're infused with rock history, and it's an amazing thing. I mean, because getting it got me so many jobs that I can't even explain, and it developed me as a producer. Right now, I'm producing so many projects. I just finished this females project. Her name is Nina Kazi. I just finished Gwendolyn Davis. I just finished. I'm just producing people right and left, and it's all because that foundation was given to me by my dad. You know what I mean? And he really taught me the right way how to do stuff, and plus I could play any kind of music, and that was because that was his great trait, that he could play with whoever, and that's what he taught me. He says, even if we're playing with Buffy St. Marie, don't overplay. It's a time when you have to you have to play with the music. If nothing else, I've learned how to do, no matter whose project it is, I stay within the realms of that project, whether it be country, rock, whether it be soft jazz, whether it be jazz, whether it be rock, whether it be hard rock, metal rock, whatever. It doesn't matter. Whether it's space jam music, you got to stay within the realm. And if you notice that I played on most of my dad's albums, except for that live stuff, but that was because we just had a bond, and he knew how to make me play stuff.
Well, there's that one album, I'm so glad this is why the Jake Feinberg Show exists, because I can ask Tony Saunders about this. The album with your dad, he's sitting on the front of like a real pretty souped up, nice, maybe a Cadillac or something like that. It's just Merl Saunders, self-titled, from '74.
Oh, is it sitting on a Bentley? I think
Bentley. I mean, I'm not a car guy, but that was a beautiful car.
Yeah.
And then that was the Ant Monk band.
Yeah.
Okay, that was and some super. I love how you guys work that in to the degree in which I think like Michael Howell was even on that album.
Yeah. He played guitar with my dad too, and I mean, just my dad just had a feel. That was one of the I forget David Axelrod came in to produce that record.
Did he really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Fantasy wanted. It's either that one or Leave Your Hat On. I remember Axelrod came in to help my dad produce them because my dad would always
to make it funky, or what did Axelrod do?
They just wanted a different vibe. They wanted it to be, because at that time Wayne Henderson from the Crusaders was around Fantasy, and they were like, and Stanley Turrentine made that record that had Pieces of a Dream on it that was really commercial. So they were trying to get out of all of these jazz guys like commercial hits, and
that's kind of I don't like that at all.
Yeah, but it was different. You know what I mean? When you figure that how a record company works, they're sometimes it's not even about the music; it's about what the record company wants, and that's why it's imploded now. And now it's back basically an artist selling their own CDs and just find a good distribution company. But it's a lot different now.
It seemed to me that the administrative people really let got out of the way of the musicians for in the early '70s, and that changed a lot. Where you had all these middlemen who didn't know what the heck they were doing,
right? Getting
involved and mucking everything up because they wanted it done a certain way, even though the musicians didn't really. At the end of the day, people like Orrin Keepnews at Contemporary, or whoever was running those, fantasy sessions. They got out of the way. I mean, they just stayed away and said, "You guys know what you're doing. Do your magic," and that's it.
But I will tell you that my dad, Axelrod was a nice guy. He came and not only did he produce the record, but he came and hung with my dad, so he got to know my dad.
He's not part of it because he did all that stuff with Cannonball too, which was very cool.
And that was one of the cool things of that session. I walked into a hotel room here at the Marriott, and it was like, Tony, this is Cannonball, and I was like, wow,
holy
I met him and Nat Adderley the same day, and when my dad lived in New York, I would play with Nat Adderley Jr., my cousin Ray Chu, friends, just like fantastic musicians that are making a name for themselves right now. My cousin Ray Chu was the MD on American Idol, and he's also like a great producer.
Wow.
And Nat Adderley Jr. played with Luther and all those people. But we all, I mean, it's like a foundation, I should say. There's different stages of where people grow up. You know, when Fantasy had all those jazz guys, they were trying to do something that was good because they were trying to make great music. And I will tell you this, Saul Zaentz was a great guy for liking people as the president of that company. If this guy was walking down the street when I'm playing a street festival here, and he goes, "Hey, Tony, how you doing?" Because I've known him since I was like 7 years old. And people are going, "Tony, do you know who that was that just said hi to you?" I said, "Yeah, it's Saul Zaentz." He goes, "You know he's the president?" I said, "I've known him since I was like 7 years old." So, I remember when he was a secretary.
Is he still around, or is he still around?
Yeah, he's still around. He's retired.
Oh, you got to toss me his contact info. I need to talk to him immediately.
Okay.
I was going to say, Tony, the reality is that you know, for in terms of your musical career, what is the production is there? Talk a little bit about kind of a band that you are gigging with right now that kind of brings you back that old soul when you play.
There are two different things I like to do. You know, the music that you hear that I'm producing, that's like really great. It really gathers stuff, and then I work with Michael Hinton in bands, and we do stuff tribute to my dad. And Michael Hinton is a Rainforest guy, and
yeah.
And you know, we usually use this guy Mike Emerson on keyboards, and you know, the drummers vary, and it depends who I'm working with. I'll use as singers, and then you know, we go out and we play that stuff that my dad did, and then there's my jazz stuff where you know, it's a killer band.
Yeah, what is it?
It's Tosh Cryer plays keyboards and does vocals. Lissa Patterson sings backgrounds. And I play bass. The drummers is this 21-year-old kid. He's incredible, David. And you know, we go out and play. Bill Hampton plays guitar, and we go out and just like that stuff that you played, you know, leading into the show.
Sure.
And that stuff that we play on that album, we play that stuff like note for note.
Yeah, I love that bridge in that song too.
Isn't that cool?
Oh man, it's funky. It's good. You know, something popped in and out of my mind when you were talking about this with Saul Zaentz. Is that his name?
Saul Zaentz. Yeah.
So he's catcalling you, and you're like, "Yeah, I know that guy." But then also, like, you'd walk around and like, did you know Cal Jader and?
Oh yeah, I knew Cal Jader since I was a young kid. Vince Garalji.
Yeah, and the thing is that Cal had Merl on his albums on Fantasy too.
They were all together.
They were all. And nobody, there were no managers, right? I mean, everybody was just sort of like.
They were just, you know what, the Weiss brothers started Fantasy, and Max Weiss, he was a great guy. He was a big kid, so I spent a lot of time with him when I was like 7 and 8.
So you wouldn't get beat up?
No, he would just like, for a president of a label, to be hanging out with kids, taking them to the ice cream shop, and babysitting us while my dad records in the studio with Cal Jader and, you know, these different people. You know, when he made that record Soul Groovin', you know, like the original one.
That was on Galaxy or
Galaxy Records, yeah, and he had a couple singles out, and Max Weiss was the president, Saul Zaentz was the secretary, and it was on 60 Treat Street in San Francisco, and it was just, you know, I was just a little kid. I remember when Vince Garalji made Live at Grace Cathedral, you know, I was just always interested when they made all that music for Vince Garalji made all that music for Snoopy, for Charlie Brown.
Unbelievable stuff.
I was around there. I would watch Creedence rehearse, and I just, for some, you know, my affliction was always music. I always loved hanging around music, and I didn't, you know, I'm glad that I did because this is what I do now. But I'm just a descendant of what I was brought up around.
Well, and it's so important, Tony, for you to be able to, I think this is the essence of our interview, is the idea that as accomplished as you are now, you respect the fact that there was a foundation in place from before. It came from the history, and I think that something in our society is lacking. I think we've stopped learning about history. I'm talking about younger generations.
Right.
Really,
right.
The ethnic component to it, the hardships that many of our parents had to go through, and
right.
you know, and at the end of the day, the idea of human decency and not looking at the color of people's skin, anything like that, it trumped everything. And I wanted to, in the remaining moments here, talk about what I feel is one of the coolest stories. And I think, I'm not sure where you were in 1986, but as the story would have it, Jerry had gone into this coma, in diabetic coma, and he came out of the coma, and he had totally forgotten how to play the guitar.
Correct.
And who called who, and how did that? Just please take us through that in our remaining minutes, if you would.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty much what I know about the situation is that my dad, as soon as he found out that he went into the coma, he went over to see him, and he went over to Marine General, saw him, and then I think Jerry wanted him there to just for comfort, and it was one of those times when he really they just needed each other. And the friendship never, even if they played or if they didn't play, the friendship never waned. And then once he got out of the hospital, he would come over to my dad's house pretty much every day, and they would play, and he would reinstitute, what was music, because he had forgot a lot. And actually, he bought me a scale book that I still have, the Sarius's Book of Scales, that has every scale known to man. Some that you can play, some that are just mathematically correct. But they would go into stuff, and they started playing jazz. And I think that out of that came, that's why Jerry played on the Blues for the Rainforest, because he would always help my dad do whatever my dad wanted. They just had that love for each other. But it was an amazing thing to watch his memory come back, because playing music that that he was familiar with and unfamiliar with. I mean, to have that happen to you is quite, if that's what you do, it's probably pretty breathtaking. But
I think what's really cool, and this is coming from somebody who didn't know anybody during that time, but Jerry really liked to he just felt comfortable around people where he felt like he could be himself.
Right.
Where he just felt like he could be Jerry. He could ask questions. He could be curious, because he didn't want, in other situations you're more vulnerable. You don't trust as much. And then with your father, it was clearly like he just felt like he could be himself. Yeah,
that's definitely, because the music was like that, man. No matter from when they first started, it was just relaxed, casual. It wasn't a thing that they went to, let's play these gigs and let's make money. It wasn't about that. It's just, let's play some music and let's try to play some great music. Let's learn some things. Let's do some different things.
Exactly.
And it's what this society is missing today. When I listen to those, I'll be in the studio with these young kids, and I say, you know what? You got that drum beat playing so loud. Did you ever thinking about? It's not about a loop. It's about a song, and that there are parts of a song. There's an intro. There's a verse. There's a pre-chorus, and there's a chorus. Now, why don't you change the timbre of that drum when it goes to the pre-chorus, and I'll play along with it on bass, and they'll go, oh yeah, you know what I mean? And for real, I turn kids on to how a song is made, and that's basically when he came out of that coma. If you notice, they had like a lot of commercial music after that. The Dead did.
Oh yeah,
they had a lot of commercial success, not just the music that the Dead played, but the songs were like really structured, and that was just because he had went through that, and they wanted to have something. All the tunes kind of changed a little bit. If you listen to them pre-coma and after coma, the songs were like really tight. They really grew because of that, because of Jerry's education in music. And what can you say? I'm proud of him because he would tell me stuff, and this guy's like a superstar. And I didn't even know it, because he never had that air about him. He was just another guy. Just another guy, a great guitar player, and he's just another guy that wanted to push himself to the edge of greatness. And he didn't care that there were millions of people who just loved his every word. He was into the playing the music.
Absolutely.
And that there were people who watched it, that was cool too.
Hey, Tony, it has just been such a pleasure, and I look forward to doing another session with you soon and talking more about today's music as well, my friend. So thanks for being part of the Jake Feinberg Show.
That'll be good. Jake, I love talking to you, and we'll stay in touch.
Thanks a lot, Tony. This is the Jake Feinberg Show.
KJLL